right? You've got a clear text, right? There's nothing about having the clear text that says you can't print. It's all about whether the client treats the clear text in some special manner. So, for example, with the iTunes Music Store, Jan Johansson broke the iTunes Music Store last year, and the way that he did it was very clever. It turns out they don't encrypt iTunes Music at the source. That's because they get these efficiencies in distribution by using Akamai. So every Akamai node has like a mirror of the music store, and it's all encrypted to a common key. Basically, it's not encrypted. It's encrypted to an easily guessable key. And so they send you this clear text file, and then when it hits your computer encrypts it. Right? Your computer actually stabs you in the back when you get the file, and it encrypts it against your use of it. So Jan wrote a piece of software that impersonated the client, right? Went to the iTunes Music Store and said, I am Doctorow.craphound.com, and here's my password, and I'd like to buy this song by the... And then when it got it and transferred 99 cents into Steve Jobs' pocket, it just didn't apply the encryption step, right? So that's what happens when you don't have a trusted client, is you can ignore those rules. The airtight bubble gets pricked, and it explodes. So you need trusted clients for this to happen. Well, how do you enforce trust? Well, you get to license who gets to get your keys. So if before all it took to make compatible software with Microsoft Office is to reverse engineer their file formats, today we're moving into a world where what it takes to be compatible with Microsoft Office is to get a license from Microsoft. That's a radically different competitive landscape to live in. It's one in which you get to choose who your competitors are. And who's going to choose a competitor that's going to put you out of business? Who's going to choose a competitor that's going to vitally disrupt the market? So it's bad enough for corporate drones to be info who don't get to own property, who have to be stuck in this kind of licensor ghetto. But it's even worse when we apply that outside to the rest of the world. Computer users aren't just people who work in big, boring insurance companies and banks as they were in the days of the mainframe. Computer users are all of us. And as we start to turn the general purpose PC and the general purpose network back into the private network, back into the special purpose device where policy can be enforced against users, to apply these rules not just to people working in boring companies in states that begin and end with a vowel. We start to apply it to everyone. So your users listen to you. You can warn them. You can warn them that when they buy high-definition video formats, they get a Trojan horse for smuggling DRM in. So the people who run DRM for high-def screens have agreed they're not going to turn on something called the image constraint token until 2010. Token that downsamples video when it's output on the analog outputs. And so what's happening is they're encouraging us to buy devices that have an anti-user measure in it, but they're promising not to use it until we've all bought the devices, right? They're promising that we will never discover this Manchurian candidate until it's too late. So you can warn the users who depend on you. Next time when you go home at Thanksgiving, don't just install Firefox. Explain to them about HD. You can tell them about EULAs. You can tell them that the Media Center PC treats them as an attacker, won't let them record some shows, and in the case of the Comcast PVRs, is actually capable of deleting your library of stored programs before the DVD comes out, as happened with 6 Feet Under last year. You can warn them against the new Office suite. You can warn them about all of this stuff, and you can fight back yourself. The best security in the world is to have a civilization built on freedom and on fairness, where we can all bargain, and in a place where our negotiating position isn't waived merely by breaking a seal. You can join EFF, a nonprofit civil liberties group. They don't pay my salary anymore, but they pay the salaries of some amazing people who do amazing work. I don't know if you've heard, but it looks like they're going to overturn the NSA wiretapping program at AT&T real soon now. I'll thank you on their behalf. The Free Software Foundation, whose Defective by Design campaign is at least trying, right? They're building the first worldwide movement to do something about DRM. And while it may look a little weird to just have 7 people show up at the Apple Store in San Francisco, imagine if I told you 10 years ago that people would show up, even 7, in cities across the world to protest anti-copying technology in their music players. How odd that would have sounded. These guys are starting a movement that's going to become something big and worldwide. You can write code. You can write good code. You can write code that enhances freedom instead of taking it away. Some of you probably work for companies that want you to design stuff that treats the owners of technology as an attacker. And you can talk to your bosses, and you can talk to your line managers, you can talk to the software architects about whether or not that's a good idea for their business and for society. And you can refuse to agree. You can refuse to allow those EULAs to bind your behavior. I'll take some questions. Thank you. Questions? It was all self-explanatory. Nothing controversial at all. Yes, sir.
DRM will always be breakable due to the user having a key and ciphertext at the same time. How can we convince businesses that piracy won't be rampant?
Well, I think that you need to reframe it. So the question was, since DRM's security model is fundamentally broken, you give people the ciphertext and the cipher and the key, and you expect them not to render a clear text at will. What do we do with companies that piracy won't be rampant? I think what we need to do is we need to encourage companies to view the fact that the internet makes copying easy as a virtue instead of a vice. And there are people who are adapting their business models to it. And in the same way that there were people who adapted their business models to radio, right? There were people who believed that Marconi should be forced to redesign the radio so that you could charge admission to it, because that was the vaudeville business model. You can't come into the hall unless you pay someone $1, and if you don't pay them $1, they throw you out. Right? And they said, well, go back to the drawing board and give me a radio I can charge $1 for every time I give a performance. Now, the people who folded their arms and demanded that the world reconfigure itself into a way that was more hospitable to their traditional way of doing business ended up driving taxis and flipping burgers. The people who said, let's figure out a business model that treats the fact that anyone can receive radio, that a well-functioning broadcast system is one in which you receive it at the highest fidelity over the longest distance on the widest variety of equipment. The definition of a good radio, in the same way that the definition of a good internet is that it copies many bits quickly with the least control at the most and the most speed and the most faithfulness. Sure. Right? Those people eventually got rich. And so we have some artists who are pursuing this. You have people like the Techno Brega artists in Brazil, the largest new music forum in South American history, I think, who basically they give live performances, they're DJs, and they let people give away their music. And not only do they let people give away their music, that have been doing, they actually had a key realization, which is that if they let people sell their music, then the people who were essentially advertising their live shows would put even more energy into it than they would if they could only give it away. And so you can buy Technobrega music and the money doesn't go back to the Technobrega artists, but they perform. And the way that they find their residual income is the way that almost all of us find our residual income, which is that they take the money they earn and they put it in a 401k, right? Or they buy a house, or they do whatever. After all, royalties are not a great way to guarantee a residual income. 98% of the works in copyright aren't available commercially. 97% of the people with a recording deal are earning $600 a year or less with it. So if we're going to say, well, what will happen to my residual income? The answer has to be what residual income? Right? If you're relying on your copyrights to carry you in your dotage, you better get used to eating cat food. Right? A smart artist is one who has a backup plan, a plan B, in the instance works don't form the tiny minority of work that continue to be economically viable decades after their initial production. There are other people who are doing this. In fact, you could argue that the people who sell music through the iTunes Music Store are making money without DRM, in the sense that iTunes Music Store music isn't sold because it has DRM in it. Right? No one says, I could download from eDonkey and pay 0 cents, or I can download from iTunes and pay 99 cents, but the iTunes has DRM, that one's for me. Right? The 1.5 billion tracks that they've sold have been sold in spite of the DRM, not because of it. And if you want to build a business case for selling more work, you need to start by offering a better value proposition. I have 15 minutes, thank you. Other questions? Sir?
The infinite copyright situation that we're facing these days?
Additional on infinite copyright. So copyright is extended every 20 years or so by the entertainment industry lobbying for it. Is there anyone here from the UK? No? Sorry. If there were people here from the UK, I would tell you to go back and talk to Parliament, because they're about to extend the copyright on British sound recordings for another 45 years. That happens all the time, and it happens all over the world. And it's bad news. It's bad news because for most of us, 45 years after our work is created, 100 years after our work is created, and more, and in this country now it's the life of the creator plus 75 years, which, you know, if you created it when you were 15 and you died at 80, that's a long term of copyright. Figuring out who you need to talk to before you can reuse that work, before you can bring it back, archive it, or put it back in the stream of commerce, make a new work from it, is almost impossible. And certainly costs more than you'll ever hope to earn from those works. And so as a result, the works languish, right? You might have a piece that you think would be interesting to use in your new transformative work, but figuring out who you need to pay, let alone paying them, costs more than you'll ever be able to earn back from it. So what that means is that the library is burning in slow motion. All that film made before the first Mickey Mouse cartoons is turning to slime, and we can't bring it back because for so long as those early Mickey Mouse cartoons, not Mickey Mouse himself, right? Mickey Mouse is a trademark. He'll exist in perpetuity for so long as Disney is associated with him in the public mind. But those early 5-minute shorts, for so long as they remain in copyright, all those other works disappear. It's a kind of radical denuding of the marketplace. And there are a lot of bad things you can do to artists, right? You can plagiarize us, you can rip us off, you can leave us to die in penury, you can write nasty things about our books on Amazon. But of all the things that you can do to artists that horrify artists, I think one that for which we reserve a special creeping horror is the spectacle of the mountain of books on fire. It's being removed from the public eye. It's being removed from the public sphere. It's being forgotten by history. And there's nothing that will guarantee our being forgotten by history than by creating this field, unnavigable minefield of proprietary interests around our work. And that's getting worse, not better. So for example, WIPO, the World Intellectual Property Organization, is embarked on something called a broadcasting treaty that would create a separate right, not just the copyright, but what's called a broadcasting right. And that broadcasting right would accrue to people who transmitted information, including in the webcasting right, people who transmitted information over the web, not the creators. Right? So you might have the creator's permission, or it might be in the public domain, or it might be fair use, or it might not be copyrightable, like C-SPAN. The stuff your government makes, they can't copyright. That said, you will still have to get permission from someone whose creative contribution to the work was electromagnetically modulating it. And those people get a 50-year monopoly over the reuse of the work. So even if you can track down the rights holder, you have to secondarily track down the person who sent you the copy, and you have to clear it with them too. So I think it's really important that we hold that back. The next term extension fight is due soon. It'll probably be within 5 years or so that we're going to start seeing the next term extension fight. And I think that we all need to come to the barricades. And if you sign up for EFF's mailing list, Effector, you'll get notice when that stuff starts to happen. And for those of you who are in Europe, you need to start looking at what's happening with phonogram rights, performance rights. Other questions? Sir?
A moment ago, we were talking about radio, and you said that the people who came up with the new business model based on radio's ability to reach as many people as possible became rich, and those who could not create a new business model failed. Weren't the people who created that new business, aren't they the